It's water, I swear. Hey guys, so I thought we'd just do like a chatty video, just a simple thing for today on the phone. Mainly because my DSLR died while I was doing my makeup and I can't be patient enough to wait for it. So we're just gonna try this on the phone. I hope you guys don't mind. But I thought we'd talk about some controversial things, but something I'm very passionate about, and that is Gyaru and the misperceptions of Gyaru and why people kind of misinterpret it even when they try out the style as a beginner, as well as just outside perceptions. We're gonna get into that as well. So I've been into Gyaru for about 10 years. That's how much I love it. And I almost even left last year because certain things weren't making me happy about the community. I just didn't like how it functioned. And like I said, it was making me really unhappy. It was making me hate my hobby. And so I had to really come to terms with what made me happy, and I had to take out the things that made me unhappy to do the thing that made me happy, because I've been into this too long to just stop, you know, especially with this closet over here. Like, bitch, you've invested too much time and money to be stopping. But yeah, I really do love it. It's something I really like. So I'd like to start off with like misinterpretations, and I think the biggest culprits of this are two sub-styles, and that's Kogal and that's Himekaji. And we're gonna get on to Kogal first because Kogal is my biggest pet peeve, but it's also the simplest to explain. But it kind of gets me into Gyaru history a little bit. There's a really interesting article I read by somebody who just did like a all-out Gyaru history article. It's like multiple articles, and they talk about Kogal in it. And in this article, this person explains that a lot of rich girls got into like the whole California beach babe thing, had boyfriends, kind of, I don't want to say they grew up too fast, but like in the 90s and early 2000s that definitely was a theme. A lot of younger girls in general just looked older than what they did. So it was a lot of gals, I think, that had boyfriends who were older, would want to sneak into clubs. It was slang in clubs for underage girls that weren't supposed to be there. Also, this gets us kind of into the whole uniform thing. So obviously there's sexualization that comes with the uniform, but I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to talk about why the uniform is such an iconic part of Gyaru. So what happened with the school uniform, first off, was in the 90s, certain schools got a revamp. If you've looked at school uniforms from the 80s in Japan, they're really frumpy. They almost look juvenile looking, per se. I don't know how to explain them. If you've seen them before, you know what I'm talking about. They have a really thin ribbon. Some of them are even like suspender looking skirts. Some are seifuku. Some are the blazer sets, but they're way more boxy looking. So in the 90s, it was a lot more polished, and there were even designers that worked on certain schools' uniforms. And this is something that I noticed in J-dramas and even in certain anime and mangas. A lot of girls fawn over the school uniforms, not because of the school, but also just because the uniform is cute. And the thing is that most of these uniforms that are cute come from very prestigious schools. These aren't easy schools to get into. They're expensive, or you have to be very smart to get in, but I think money is definitely a huge factor in that. And for a gal, that is as braggadocious as carrying a Louis Vuitton on your arm and your boyfriend on the other. So it was like wearing a brand name, because it basically said, yes, I can afford this Louis Vuitton bag, but I can also afford to go to the school, and I can also maintain this bleached hair and this tan, yada 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 yada. You get my point. It was a status symbol. So I think here's where Gyaru becomes kind of a social fashion, right? Is before there was like a magazine kind of dictating the trends, girls through word of mouth would spread trends and whatnot. So if you were anybody who was anybody, you knew what was in because you knew the right people, or you looked up to shop staff. I remember the article talking about how the 109 shop staff like acted as older sisters. Like, girls looked up to them because they knew what was in. Poses the question, how did Kogal become so mainstream? And the answer is obviously girls who didn't go from as affluent schools wanted to be included in this, because suddenly there was a huge boom. Everybody was talking about these girls who customized the shit out of their uniform as if it weren't cool already. They were customizing the shit out of it because they could afford to get away with it, because just, you know, like, I'm assuming that Prestigious schools were probably one or the other. They were probably really strict, or they didn't give a shit. But I'm assuming that a lot of the more attainable things, maybe like the loose socks or whatnot, maybe came from the poorer schools, because that's such a small thing. And from what I understand in the article, it mentioned even Yankee girls wanting to go from that to like Kogal. We clearly know that those girls don't give a fucking shit about the rules and stuff. So yeah, I feel like by then also a lot of brands were coming up with mock uniforms for maybe girls who had kind of a lame school uniform. So you get brands like Eriko Honomi and Rose Fanfan who kind of came up with Kogal uniforms that weren't from a school. They just looked like uniforms and stuff. But here's my problem with Kogal. First off, we see it in anime and manga as kind of a negative stereotype, obviously, because there was a sexualization of the school uniform, because nothing screams I'm underage more than a school uniform. The sexualization of it clearly in the West as well, with Tattoo and Britney Spears and things like that. We could get into that as well. But obviously, manga and anime take all the stereotypes of gal and throw it into a series sometimes, and that's a problem. This isn't to say that you can't find series that have Kogal that are appropriate and are actually accurate, but they mainly are in manga more than they are anime. You'll find a rare anime or two like Gals and Peach Gal that are actually pretty accurate, and they're based towards that high school and middle school demographic, which is why you might not like it. It's definitely Kogal based. It's definitely young girl based. And that's why the school uniforms are a big part of it, and the culture around it is such a big part of it. It's why in Gals, Ron brags about having a school bag or wanting a school bag from a certain school, because it's prestigious and that's part of the culture, as I have mentioned. Is being able to say, I go here and I can afford to go here, or I have a boyfriend that goes here. So here's my big stink with the Gaijin Gyaru community and the whole interpretation of Kogal as a sub-style. It's a sub-style when you're stuck in high school or when you're stuck in your teens. But after your teens, it's not appropriate anymore and it starts looking like cosplay. It's a costume at that point because you're not in high school anymore. So, a lot of these people who want to get into gal or are interested in gal kind of come from cosplay, and they already kind of have like a seifuku or like a school uniform in their closet, and they're like, oh, I can do gal with this uniform. And that's their first attempt at gal, and they're like 20 something and doing this thing that doesn't look right because that's their first attempt at gal, and it clearly looks like a costume because they're not in school anymore. And I know a lot of people's argument is going to be, oh, I saw such and such gal in a school uniform. Okay, that depends on where they're going. First off, we have Kyaba events where there's school uniforms because that caters to men, obviously. We have nightlife events that might have like Halloween, things like that might have like an event where one might be worn. Para videos where everybody has to look the same. That might be a good theme for one. I'm trying to think of where else. Maybe EDM festivals and stuff where like a group of gals will, they're usually like really bright pink school uniforms. They don't even look really like a school uniform. They very clearly look like a costume. That's when you start seeing gals in school uniforms. Like I said, most of the time it's usually for a costume and it is for a nightlife event or something similar of that nature. That's your first attempt at Gyaru. It kind of looks strange because at that point it is cosplay. That's where Kimikaji comes in and the Gaijin Gyaru community. And I think Liz Lisa and Popteen and what happened to them both kind of go hand in hand. Because it seemed like once Popteen shifted, so did Liz Lisa, and this was around 2013. So everything beyond 2013 is harder to coordinate and make gal, just to let you know. So the thing about Popteen back in those days was it was a really appealing magazine, and it was a way to kind of get new gals in because you'd see celebrities on the cover. So Egg was nice and all, but you might not know who's on the cover. But Popteen would occasionally have Ayumi Hamasaki or Namiya Amuro or Boa on the cover, and you'd be like, I know who that person is. And so you'd pick it up and then you'd find all this other cool shit in there, and that's how you get into gal. At least from the Japanese standpoint, I can see how that would work, and that's how it worked for me. to a certain extent. So the thing is that Liz Lisa was always featured in Popteen. Like, Popteen and Liz Lisa kind of went hand in hand, like, all the time. And at the time, around this time too, I do have to note that Gyaru, or just fashion in Japan in general, a lot of younger girls looked older. So that demographic was pretty wide, because you'd have teenagers dressing older, but you'd also have older gals dressing their age. It was a cute and a sexy style. Like, it went hand in hand. It was perfect. So a lot of girls that were 16, you wouldn't particularly know they were 16 unless you knew their age at times. I mean, I think the best example of that now is Kiripu. Because when she first started, I didn't realize she was as young as she actually was, and I was like, holy shit, she looks way older and stuff. But that was a definite thing in the 2000s and early 2010s. And here's where Liz Lisa shifted. Liz Lisa, back in those days, was really girly and fluffy, and then like the whole Hime Gyaru boom happened. And then that's when Liz Lisa got known for floral prints rather than velour and lace and like fur around the bust and stuff. Because before, they didn't really have so much floral print when I look at old magazines. That didn't happen until there was a bit of a Hime Gyaru boom. And then Jesus Diamante comes on the scene, La Parfait comes onto the scene, and those are very, very big, prestigious brands, but they're very fucking expensive. So you have these Hime gals in like casual wear, like Liz Lisa was like their grocery store run shit. For other gals, that was their introduction into getting into gal, or maybe even getting into Hime gal because they could afford it. So that's where the problem lies. So when you look at Liz Lisa from these times, like either arms are showing or legs are showing, both are showing, it was a lot sexier and a lot like older looking. And then Popteen in 2013, and I had the issue where it made the shift, and I was so fucking confused. They started calling this new style Otona, meaning an adult, and it looks the furthest thing from adult looking that there is. Like, it looks like little girl wear. Like, I blame partially Larm as well, because it's definitely kind of dived in there, but at the time it was called Otona, and girls started not wearing as much eyelashes, and Liz Lisa toned the fuck down, and they started isolating their older demographic because their clothes looked less sexy and were like just super, super cute, like to the point where like I start trying to wear like newer Liz Lisa and I start looking really fucking stupid because I'm too old to pull off that type of look. So that's where kind of the confusion lays, is because of that whole Otona shift that looks kind of in. And the thing is that Liz Lisa still tried to capture their adult audiences with like Pandera and Emma, but they never really popped off because they looked like Uniqlo and Goo. Like they were overpriced for what they were, and people still wanted really detailed clothes, I feel like, and just those brands just didn't do it. And like the thing about Liz Lisa is they've definitely isolated their older demographic by catering to just teenagers. So I hear this question float around a lot, and that's the question of, can new Liz Lisa fit into the Gyaru aesthetic? Yes, if you have the hair and makeup, because the thing is that the thing is that one, you have to be very precise with what you pick from Liz Lisa nowadays, because the thing is that Liz Lisa back in the day, what I've noticed is that arm and leg are showing, and that thigh area is highlighted sometimes if you're covering both somehow. There's just a really major adult factor that's involved that isn't involved now. So you have to be very careful with what you pick, because if you pick something that's too young, it will look more like Larm than Gyaru, or the Gyaru makeup will look really out of place, which gets me onto another thing. You definitely have to have the Gyaru makeup and hair to do it. I'm not really doing Gyaru today. I don't think, some people might consider this gal, but I don't think this is heavy enough. This is just like normal makeup. I feel like I went light because I'm not wearing circle lenses today. But usually you'd have like a top and a bottom lash. You'd have your blush high up on your cheeks. Maybe a little bit of contouring, but not too much, because this is another thing that I think people misperceive with Gyaru when they give advice to beginners when it comes to like Himekaji. some people can get away with doing the contour here and it not look harsh. When I do darker styles, that looks great. When I do cuter, brighter styles, it looks stupid. I think it works when you're doing Tsuyomi. I think it works when you do like a harder style, like real Mars, or like even like super sexy Mars. It might work, but like when I try to do Himekashi, I do not want to overly contour or do like a really distinct nose stripe, because that would just look really strange with Liz Lisa, honestly. But you definitely want your makeup to be very eye focused. You want like lashes, the spiky lashes up to like here, and usually they wear a pink or a coral cheek and a nude lip or like a bright orange or pink, not like Nicki Minaj pink, but like a really like subtle pink. Think Jill Stewart or like Anna Soy, and you'll see what I mean. But that's definitely necessary when you do Gyaru, is you definitely have to have the makeup and hair. And the hair doesn't have to be complicated. I feel like a lot of people are like, if it's not curled, it's not Gyaru. That's not fair, because I see a lot of gals, like casual gals with really like straight normal hair. Usually it isn't like layered or bleached. It doesn't necessarily have to be bleached or colored. But I think definitely if you have like your hair kind of like styled, you know, with like a certain way of parting it, and maybe layers if you're gonna do it straight, and your makeup is just popping, then it doesn't really matter. It really depends on what you do though. I think when you look at your outfit, you can be your own best judge whether or not you can get away with wearing your hair straight or not. Like certain Liz Lisa outfits I definitely have to curl my hair. But then other Liz Lisa outfits, I'm like, I don't have to do that. I've looked at certain Mars outfits I've even had and been like, I should have curled my hair for that. And others I'm like, actually this doesn't look bad without curls. Like this isn't horrible if I throw a headband on or like an accessory or something. It doesn't look too out of place the way I thought it would be. So really just use your own best judgment for that. So a lot of you are seeing Popteen and Liz Lisa, which is very attainable now, but you're associating it with the past that doesn't exist anymore because there was a shift and the demographic changed, and they completely isolated, like I said, that whole older demographic that does dress a little sexier. So that's definitely where the question lies, is can you still do gal with Liz Lisa nowadays? Yes, but it's very challenging to do, and you definitely have to have your hair and makeup on point or it just looks really fucking strange. I say this because you look at Himena or you look at certain gals from the past, and for some reason they're really able to pull out that Larmy style and somehow still really look gal. I don't know what it is, but it still looks gal even though it's really different. It's really strange. I don't even know how to explain what the hell happened, but it happened. So yeah, I feel like those are people's first impressions of gal, and then people kind of get lost in translation because so much has changed, or they're aiming for a style that's way too young for them, to the point of where it kind of doesn't look like what it's supposed to be, because it's not supposed to look that way to start with. It's all about intention. It's all about knowing what's up, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of my foresight onto why beginners and a lot of outside people misinterpret gal or completely miss the mark if they try the style. But yeah, that's basically the end of the video. I hope this is a little informative and explanatory for you guys. Just a word of disclaimer, my word isn't law. This is just my theory on things and how I see things, and why I personally don't do things like Kogal because of this insight, and I hope this kind of makes sense as you guys try things. If you guys would like more videos like this, or even have questions about gal, leave them in the comment box below. I wouldn't mind answering questions about things. Obviously things are going to be in my opinion. My opinion isn't law. You can do what you want, but this is just my insight, and I just hope this is a non-problematic, just informative way of going about this. Anyways, until next time, guys.